If you play D&D 5e, you've probably had those combats that seem to just kind of last forever. It's been 15 minutes since your last turn and you've totally zoned out. You got a 4-hour session, but you seem to barely even be able to finish one combat during it. Maybe you've seen tips for how to speed up combat or to make it more exciting, or maybe even some homebrew, but it just never seems to quite get you there. Enter Nimble 5e.
Proclaiming itself to simplify 5e, but also provide more options, speeding up combat, and providing the best combat ever. Is this the amazing panacea it claims to be, or does it fall short of its lofty ambitions?
Hello and welcome to Tabletop Trends, where we take a look at the most fun and creative TTRPGs out there, ranging from the big names to some of the more obscure ones. We sit down with the designers, we ask questions, we crack some jokes, and we play their games together. And we're going to let you know how the game works, what makes it special, the things you might love, and the things you might not love so much. And by the end of it, you should have a general idea of how the game feels, and if it might feel like a good fit for your table. We had the opportunity to sit down with Nimble 5e's designer Evan Diaz to discuss the game and test out the Nimble preview rules.
The core DNA of D&D is still there. So like anybody familiar with D&D, like will recognize it right away. Nimble has taken 5e and eliminated a lot of the splog and the cruft. So like things like a turn in combat taking like 5 or 10 minutes. Well, then people will start stacking their dice or on their phone, and like you do your one thing and you miss, and then okay, well my turn's over. So like that kind of stuff, Nimble takes 5e and eliminates all of that slog, all of that unintuitive, fiddly things, the things that are not fun, so that we can focus on the things that are fun, so that choices matter more. So that's sort of the idea.
Essentially, it's a new game system that's adjacent to 5e, but with lightweight rules that help speed up gameplay. It brings in a new action economy and combat system. It also streamlines skills and saves, and it completely replaces 5e's classes and spells. With so many changes, you might be thinking the same thing I was, which is, how compatible is this with 5e? And I'm really hoping you're familiar with 5e because I'm going to be comparing this to 5e a lot. But I don't feel too bad because it's literally in the name, Nimble 5e. Anyway, I asked Evan what he meant by compatible, and he means pretty dang compatible.
If you have like 5 people at your table, 3 of them could be running Nimble characters and 2 could be running 5e characters. So if the adventure calls for a DC 13 perception check, it's a DC 13 perception check. The wizard, for instance, instead of rolling a D20, he would just roll his damage, his D10 for the firebolt.
Right.
So you can either use the Nimble core rules with 5e characters, or all the Nimble classes, they can, instead of having 3 actions, they can use action, bonus action, reaction, and movement. So you can use either rule set, or you can mix and match.
So Evan says you can run a 5e character right next to a Nimble character, and you can either run them in Nimble rules or 5e rules. This was very surprising to me. I think you could tell from my face that I was a little skeptical. But once we go over all the rules, I'll talk about this a little bit more. I should probably put a note in here and say that normally I put in recordings of the game that we played, but unfortunately I made a fumble and only recorded my own audio. Sorry. Alright, so Nimble keeps a lot of the same core elements of 5e, but what are the differences then? There are 2 big differentiators. The first one is action economy, and the second one is attack rolls. Let's start with the easy one first. Action economy. Wait, action economy is easier to cover than attack rolls? Yes, and you'll see when we get there.
So in D&D you get like action, bonus action, reaction, and movement. Rather than like the sort of siloed independent things, in Nimble you just get 3 actions. If you want to move 3 times, you can move 3 times. If you want to attack once and then move and then attack again, you can do that.
So you have 3 actions on your turn. You want to move, attack, enter a rage. Any of those are an action. And yes, you can attack multiple times, but each time you attack will give you stacking disadvantage. So first attack is regular, then the second one has disadvantage, then the third one has double disadvantage. The interesting part is you can actually use these actions off of your turn. There are 4 new reactions introduced, and you can use each of them once between turns. To go alongside that, you regain your action points at the end of your turn. So you can use all of your action points to do whatever reactions you want, and on your actual turn, you just have whatever is remaining. So if you use 2 reactions, then on your turn you only have 1 action left. So use them wisely. The first is defend. This reduces incoming damage based on your armor score. I'm going to defend it. I have 8 armor. The second is interpose. If you are within 10 feet of somebody getting hit with an attack, you can jump in the way and take that attack yourself. The fact that you can guarantee protecting an ally makes tanking a very viable and fun option in Nimble. I bet this one has really great moments. Third is opportunity attack. Basically the same as Dungeons and Dragons, but these opportunity attacks have disadvantage. Fourth is help. When somebody is attacking, you can give them advantage on that attack by helping them. I believe the goal of these reactions is to keep players engaged, looking for the right opportunity to use them. And I think they do accomplish that to varying degrees. I think the real standout here is interpose. If someone's in a risky situation, players will keep their eye on the table, looking for an opportunity to jump in. And the way it works, even a mage can jump in for a tankier character, and that feels pretty awesome. Some of the classes in the game can even do these reactions for free. For example, Nimble's version of the Paladin, called the Oathsworn, can do it once a round for free. And in fact, the entire class is kind of built around doing the interpose reaction. Generally speaking, these classes do map on pretty cleanly to Dungeons and Dragons classes. The Barbarian turns into the Berserker, the Rogue turns into the Cheat, the Paladin turns into the Oathsworn, so on. And while the abilities are completely new, they follow the same themes. They even get subclasses at level 3 too. One cool addition is every class gets access to a pool of abilities that they can choose from. They enhance certain aspects of the character or let them do something new. It helps fill out a character concept and kind of takes the place of feats, which are not existent in Nimble. For example, the Oathsworn has an option called Unstoppable Protector, where you get a boost to your speed and you can interpose even if you're restrained or grappled or something. I think the biggest change to classes is that they all get a different way of dealing damage. Cheats can auto-crit. Berserkers build up rage damage every turn, making them stronger and stronger as combat goes on. Oathsworn, when they get attacked, they get a pool of damage dice that they can use when they attack. All of the classes can deal good damage, but they do it in very different ways, where each class does feel very unique. Now let's move on to the biggest change of all, the one that shifts the entire system, and this is attack and damage rolls.
In Nimble, if you want to attack with a short sword, you roll a d6. That's how much damage you do. That's it. Everybody knows immediately when the die stops rolling. They know immediately if you hit, if you miss, or if you crit. If you roll a 1 on a die, you miss. If you roll the highest number on your die, then that's a crit. And then there's exploding crits, so every time you roll the highest, you get to roll again and again and again.
In D&D, you roll an attack roll to see if you hit the target. If it's higher than their AC, you then roll damage dice to see how much you do. Nimble takes those two ideas and merges them together. For a longsword, it uses a d8 damage. On a 1, you miss. On an 8, you crit. So you're hitting 7 times out of 8, and your miss and crit chance are both 1 out of 8. With a dagger, which is a d4, you miss a quarter of the time, but you also crit a quarter of the time. I do want to pause and note that because of the way this works, you are just as likely to hit a god as you are to hit the slime. And that's not necessarily a criticism, it's just funny to think about to me. But I do need to emphasize just how big of a change this is to the entire system and all the underlying core rules because of this. The more you think about it, the more you understand just how deep those implications are. The first most obvious implication is that weapon choice now matters. Each of the weapon's dice size is going to determine your hit and miss and crit chance. The second most obvious thing is that you're going to hit a lot. Even if you are using a dagger, having a 75% chance to hit is still higher than it is in Dungeons & Dragons 5e. But if you take a larger weapon, you have a 92% chance to hit, and that's out of this world. This here is what I believe to be the true source of Nimble's fast combat. You might think that combining the attack and damage rolls into one makes Nimble faster, and I'm sure it helps, but when almost every attack hits, you end up dealing a lot of damage, so monsters and PCs end up dropping really quickly. It makes combat feel intense and scary, but it also makes it go faster. So that's a win for the system. Combat may feel a little unfair sometimes though. When the monsters act, it can feel like you're just depending on the DM's good graces to not mob your character. But if they do mob you, they are gonna hit, and they're gonna deal a lot of damage, possibly even take you out in one turn. So if you're the DM, be aware of that. Another implication of the attack and damage system that I'm not really sure about is how it affects your action usage. My worry is that attacking 3 times might be a very good choice and might be the default thing to do. Let me explain. Remember how multiple attacks gave you stacking disadvantage?
But you'll roll with disadvantage. So you roll 2d4, and you'll drop the lowest, and then that's what you're left with. So it's just the same, but it's with whatever die you're rolling. So sometimes it'll be d20, sometimes it'll be d6. Attacking with disadvantage, it's much less punishing, but it lowers your chance to crit, it lowers your average damage, and it will slightly increase your chance to miss.
So as Evan says, disadvantage is a lot less impactful in Nimble than it is in D&D 5e. I wonder what our chances are to hit with double disadvantage. Alright, here's a table showing our normal chance to hit, and then with disadvantage and with advantage. Even with double disadvantage, a longsword has a 67% chance to hit. Still a higher chance to hit than in D&D 5e. So it feels like with double disadvantage, it's still a good choice. And if you're interested, here's a table showing our expected damage, that when we attack, if we have normal hit, advantage, or disadvantage, how much damage we would expect to deal on average. Now that might be a little bit too much math, but just know that you can attack 3 times, and you have a decent chance to hit on all 3 of those attacks. So what's to stop you from doing that? Well, nothing. Except that sometimes you have to move, and sometimes you have to activate some other ability. Or you might end up defending or interposing or something like that. With some classes, it might feel like the only thing you can and should do is attack with all of your actions.
Okay, I'm gonna go for my 3rd strike, I guess.
On one hand, it can feel really good to have 3 attacks, 3 chances to deal damage. But for some reason, it actually feels bad to know that there's nothing else to do with your actions, despite having 3 of them. Now, that is going to vary from class to class. Some of them are going to have a lot of variability and things to do with their actions every turn, especially with the caster classes and those that can take on a defender tanky role. Personally though, I found myself wishing there were more viable options to spend my actions on. Okay, now that we've talked about action economy and the attack and damage rolls, let's go back and talk about compatibility with Dungeons & Dragons 5e. I ran some combats to get a handle on how compatible Nimble and D&D 5e actually were. In some combats, I took D&D monsters exactly as written, used D&D's attack and damage rolls. In other combats, I took D&D monsters and used Nimble's attack and damage rules. And I tried to convert those monsters on the fly. And both actually worked reasonably well, all things considered. But I did follow Evan's simple suggestions on how to convert D&D monsters into Nimble.
Yeah, you basically run it on the fly. The conversion chart is basically 2 bullet points. 5e monsters attack just like heroes. They just roll the damage dice. And the math works out across the level curve. Instead of AC, you just convert it to armor. So anything that has 13 or lower AC, they're unarmored. Anything that has 14 to 17 AC, then they're medium armor. Higher than that is heavy. If the stat block says Strahd attacks 3 times on his turn and he can cast a spell, and then after each player's turn he can do a legendary action, you just run it exactly as it's written. And it would be just as balanced as if you were running a 5e campaign. If you wanted to tweak it a little bit, there's some guidance in the Nimble GM guide to do that.
As an aside, some monsters can have medium or heavy armor, and basically it just does damage resistance, so they don't defend. Using these 2 bullet points Evan suggested makes monster conversion very easy on the fly. I do wonder if it'll completely fall apart at high levels using D&D monsters, but it seems to work reasonably well at low levels. Although even with my limited experience running these encounters, I already had some hiccups where I had to improv things and just guess at how the rules interacted. So I would say, if you're going to combine the rules, it should probably be a DM that is fast and loose with the rules. And honestly, that's where this game shines. It's all about being fast and loose, making combat quick and narrative. I did ask Evan where he thinks Nimble sits on the crunchometer, and this is what he said.
So like if 5e is sort of in the middle of 5, I would say Nimble is like a 2 or a 3.
And I agree that Nimble is low crunch, and that is one of its strengths. It also makes DM turns go much faster and reduces a lot of the stress that is on DMs. Monsters don't get 3 actions like players. Instead, they just move and attack. They don't get reactions either, so no opportunity attacks. So no worrying about which monster has defended and which hasn't, and keeping track of how many actions they have left. No, for the most part, they do nothing off of their turns. And when it is their turn, they all act together, and they all move and attack, and because you never need to ask players if that attack hits or misses, you just roll all the dice, tell them all the damage, and your turn is done as a DM. It's amazingly easy to run as a DM and gives you a chance to explain the narrative as you go instead of focusing on these little parts. I really like Evan's philosophy around it.
Whenever I'm GMing, like my brain is going like 100 miles an hour, and anything that I can eliminate, I want to eliminate, because like that means I have more bandwidth to like say cool things and like egg on the players and like actually do the things that will make the game more fun rather than thinking about all the mechanics and all the things.
And speaking of lessening your load, character creation is also very simple. It's another shining point because of how streamlined and simple the rules are. You can whip up characters really fast, even casters, because you don't have to pick out each individual spell you know. You just have a school of spells and you know all the spells in there, and there's not a lot.
There's far fewer spells, so the spells have sort of been boiled down into 6 spell schools, each with its own sort of theme and flavor. Like the lightning spells feel really different than the ice spells and necrotic spells. Each spell is useful across the level curve. So at level 15 and level 20, you'll still be casting these tier 1 spells and these cantrips because they're valuable. And instead of spell slots, you just get mana. A tier 9 spell costs 9 mana. Tier 1 spell costs 1 mana. You can upcast them by spending additional mana. So it sort of trusts you to spend your magical money how you want to, rather than saying you can only spend $9 bills on this tier level 9 spell.
All of these rules are available in a free preview, which I'll link below. And although the Kickstarter is over, you can still purchase the rules online from their website. Evan also live streams a lot of his game design on YouTube, and he has a very active Discord. If what we talked about here makes you interested, then head on over there and take a peek. Alright, now that we've talked about the core rules, how they work and their implications, let's discuss what we liked, didn't like, and who we think this game is for. So, Jeremy, what did you think? What did you enjoy about the game?
I think the best part of Nimble that really stands out to me kind of above everything else is just how fast it is to get into play. I remember when I jumped in to play the session, I didn't really know what to expect. I hadn't even completely read all the rules yet. And I was able to genuinely make a character understand the ins and outs of the game, as well as what I was able to do and not do within, honestly, I think it was less than 5 minutes. And that is honestly a testament to what he's been able to accomplish. Honestly, like, mind-blowing to me. And yeah, sure, it definitely helps that we have a background coming from 5e, but I honestly don't. I think that even if you don't have that background, I don't think that it's going to be that much harder for you.
And speaking of fast, the combat really was fast.
Some combats just slog a little bit in 5e. I don't think that's even possible to happen in Nimble. And as good as that can be, if you're looking for a super quick combat experience, I think the sort of flip side of that is that it can often feel a little bit too chaotic and a little bit like frenetic at times, where you don't feel like you have any agency in the things that are going on, the things that are happening. You feel like if you even get a turn, you're probably just going to be doing attack. There's a good chance that you might be dead before you even get a turn. But I'd love to know some of your thoughts on that as well.
I do have a couple more things that I like about it I want to say, but you could be full HP and be totally down in one turn, and that feels like scary. I mean, it can be. It's good for combat to feel scary, but it's not good for it to feel like I could go down at any moment and like there's nothing I can do about it.
I do want to go back and emphasize if you want to mention some of the other things, because there's a lot of really good things about the game. So I'd love to hear some more about that.
Yeah, I guess this is kind of related to that going down quickly, and it's the interpose action. And I really liked that interposing because you could jump into the way of somebody else, and that feels like something that is uncommon because people are going to go down so fast. Maybe you have more chances to actually go in and like save someone's life like every combat, even though you're not necessarily the person who's supposed to do it.
Something I didn't really get to try was some of the DM aspects of it, because you ran the combats for us. So any other thoughts about that?
I wanted to see how easy it was to mix in 5e and Nimble, especially as a DM, and like see like, okay, could I run Curse of Strahd and just like pop in, this ghoul or whatever and just run it as is. And I think it's going to take a DM that is experienced in both systems to be really good at that. Or a DM who's just really good at flying off the cuff and just like making whatever happen.
Yeah.
And like they're okay with just like things being really loose. And so for that style of DM, I think it can work. For a DM who needs things like in order, might be hard. Like you're going to encounter some abilities that will not map over to Nimble,
Sure.
or they have a consequence that's very different than intended in Nimble than it is in 5e. But I think you did mention this before, about feeling like there's not much else to do except just attack. And I played the cheat and it felt exactly like that, and it was so frustrating. I was like, why does it feel bad to attack 3 times, whereas normally in D&D I just attack once and it's okay?
Yeah, and I kind of had the exact same experience without. What's funny to me is I had it without even knowing what your experience was like playing it, and we came to the exact same conclusions, completely independent of each other. That I just felt like there wasn't really anything else to do except, as a cheat, at least, to just other than just attack, attack, attack every single turn. The stacking disadvantage felt inconsequential, and so it felt very one-dimensional, and it felt a little bit it felt a little bit flat. I know one of the other players in our game, Ford, was playing playing a mage, and he had an incredible time. He felt there was tons of things to do. There was a lot of versatility in his turns, and even on like playing with him, not even playing that mage, I felt that he had a lot to do.
Some classes felt really disappointing to play. The cheat and the barbarian, one of our players felt really disappointed with that. Maybe like if you're gonna play this game and you enjoy those options, be careful what class you're gonna pick, because it might feel too boring to play other ones. Okay, so overall, who do you think this game is designed for? Who do you think would love this game?
People who really want like a narrative flavor, they enjoy D&D, they enjoy 5e for what it is, but they want to scale back a little bit of that crunch because maybe they just want to have some much quicker, much more high stakes, much more intense combat.
I think also it's good for people who just want to play a game really fast, like you have a bunch of friends over and you're like, hey, let's play something. Like obviously it's gonna take way too long to like build the characters and like play, but like this one you'd be
by
like,
the time
let's
you
go.
make characters, no one wants to play anymore.
Exactly.
By the time you've yeah.
Exactly. And I think especially
Absolutely.
that is good for people like children. If you have kids that want to play D&D, I think this could be a perfect game for them. It's simpler, it's streamlined, and it's just like really engaging, really fast. It'll keep them entertained because things are happening really quickly.
I think it's an incredible like intro TTRPG. I don't know that I could really imagine something better designed to learn about tabletop role playing games and jump in for the first time and that kind of thing. So I think the point about kids or even just like I said, anyone who's looking to get into the hobby, I think this is probably exactly what you're looking for. After discovering this fun, fast-paced, and action-packed game, it does make me wonder what else is out there waiting to be played.
Find out with us next time on Tabletop Trends.